Hey beauties, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm doing a head-to-head comparison between these two new concealers. So here I have the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk, and I also have the McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Concealer. I had to make sure I read it off of the box. I think I've been calling it the wrong thing for the last hour. But I'm actually wearing both of these on my eyes today. I have one on each side. Can you tell which is which? Doesn't even matter, we're gonna break it all down today, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know which one of these, if either of them, are right for you. So I wanna begin by talking about each one. Let's start with the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk. This concealer retails for $38 for 12 milliliters of product. It's available in 20 different shades, offers 24-hour hydration, it has a radiant finish, medium but buildable coverage. It also contains caffeine and vitamin E. I ordered mine directly from Giorgio Armani and I picked it up in the shade 3, which was not the lightest shade available, but based on the photos online and the undertones, I thought this would be the best match. It was also the first concealer between the two that I had a chance to try, so let me show you my first impressions. That was pretty fast and easy. So far I really like it. When I'm looking close up, it looks like it has more of a matte finish. My foundation has a matte finish, but it blended pretty nicely. This side I think I need to touch up a little bit. I really like the shade. It's light enough. It gives me a little bit of brightening, but it's not too light. It's not incredibly thick. It's not too creamy. I think it looks sort of medium, probably buildable coverage, but it's not super full coverage so that it's hard to blend. I just had a little bit of a bald spot from where my brush kind of swept away both the concealer and the foundation, so I want to fill that in quickly before I finish my makeup. I like the way it looks though. It looks very smooth. That's better. It honestly doesn't look like my concealer has creased at all. Not even the tiniest, most insignificant amount. I think I did probably tap, 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 like touch up a little bit right underneath my eyes earlier today. I think when I was in the car, I kind of tapped. But other than that, I haven't touched my under eye area, so it's time for a check-in. It's been about 8 hours since I first applied this Armani Luminous Silk Concealer. I can't really believe it. It just looks exactly how it looked whenever I left this vanity earlier this morning and went about my day, and that is very rare that happens. I have noticed a couple things. For one, it oxidizes just like my Power Fabric concealer, and I always say to myself, man, I wish I had got this concealer in a lighter shade because once it oxidizes, I lose the brightness. And then here I went and ordered the exact same shade in this new Luminous Silk, and it does the exact same thing. So I did have a little bit more brightening under the eye earlier. Now it's basically the same shade. Not a huge deal because the actual performance of the concealer is really amazing. It goes on so sheer and it blends out so easily and it blends so smooth, which is a great thing. But I wish I hadn't have used a foundation brush or the concealer brush. I think this concealer might be best applied with fingers. Normally I would get some creasing right in here, the crow's feet, but so far that is just not the case. I'm excited to keep playing around with this. So the second day, I went ahead and I applied this using my fingers, and I also didn't set it. And I had great success. Usually I always set my concealer, but I just sort of thought, the finish didn't seem that radiant. I felt like it was worth a try and it worked out beautifully. So if you're somebody who doesn't like to set your concealer, you really avoid using powder under the eyes, I think you might really like this Luminous Silk Concealer. It's not that radiant, or at least it doesn't seem that radiant. I feel the same way about the Luminous Silk Foundation, so I thought that was sort of interesting. And I want to go ahead and take a moment now to compare these two. So this is the Power Fabric Concealer. One of my other thoughts when I first applied this was that it reminded me a lot of the Power Fabric, so I just want to swatch it on my hand for you guys to show you that there are some differences. So this is shade number 3 of the Luminous Silk. And then here is shade 3 of the Power Fabric. And even just with one swipe, it is so obvious that the Power Fabric is far creamier, far richer, way more pigmented than the Luminous Silk, which I also have shade 3. I'm trying to see. It looks like this has 6 milliliters versus the 12. The Luminous Silk texture feels so much thinner. And then when you touch the Power Fabric, this feels more like a true concealer that's meant to cover. It's just a lot thicker. And the shades are definitely different. The Luminous Silk is a little bit lighter than the Power Fabric 3. Something to take into consideration. Next, let's talk about this Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Concealer. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say it that this concealer has been the biggest surprise for me. It was also launched with a concealer brush and a little setting powder. I opted to skip those. This concealer retails for $32. You get 5 milliliters of product. It's available in 36 different shades. It's meant to have a radiant matte finish. It contains Vita Serum Complex, which has hyaluronic acid and ceramide, so some good stuff for your skin. I ordered mine on launch day from the Pat McGrath website, but I know it is available now at Sephora and everywhere else that sells Pat McGrath Labs products. I went ahead and chose shade L3. Based on photos on the website, you know, it's difficult with complexion products sight unseen, but I thought this would be the best bet. So let me share my first impressions. Definitely full coverage. Wow, that looks beautiful. I love it. It looks so smooth, perfected. I kind of want to feel the texture. I'm going to try to blend this out with my finger. I love the color, I love the brightness. I wonder if it's gonna oxidize as much as the Luminous Silk did, because this one starts out really bright as well, but then within a couple hours it melts and sort of blends right into the foundation. I'm about to zoom you in really close. Are you ready? We're gonna get personal, but I just want you to see there's a little bit of creasing right in here. So it's not zero creasing. I shouldn't say zero. This side is actually much better for some reason. I'm trying to think. You know what? This morning I blended this out with a brush, and on this side I used my finger, didn't I? Huh, how funny. I would think that this side that I used my finger would crease less, but I guess the brush picks up excess product, so maybe that's why it didn't crease. The differences between the two seem sort of obvious. The Pat McGrath Labs has far more coverage, it maintains its brightness, and it's best applied with a brush, whereas the Luminous Silk is more of a sheer but buildable coverage. Maybe buildable to medium, but if you want to build it up, you're going to have to apply it with your fingers. I would also say setting the Luminous Silk concealer is optional, but I want to see if my beliefs about these concealers can be confirmed, so I'm going to apply them both today, one on each eye, and that way we'll know for sure what they look like when compared directly. So right now I'm just taking this Pat McGrath, and because I know it's best applied with a brush, that's what I'm going to do. I know it's considered to be a radiant matte, but I would say it's pretty darn matte, and in my experience it is best to be set with a little powder. So now on the other side, I'm taking my Luminous Silk, and I'll apply this one. So here is the McGrath Labs. Here's the Armani Luminous Silk. When I look directly at my mirror with all of these lights, they look nearly identical. When I lean down, I can see more darkness on this side, which is the Luminous Silk, because the McGrath Labs has more coverage. That wouldn't be an issue for you unless you needed to cover dark circles or darkness underneath your eyes, in which case the McGrath Labs would be the best choice. If you sometimes have dark circles, sometimes you don't, which is the boat I'm in, the Luminous Silk is still a great choice because you can always build it up. It's so thin and sheer that you can truly build and it's not going to get heavy or cakey. But I think they both look really nice. I would compare the McGrath Labs with the Hourglass or the Chanel Corrector, something with more of a medium to full coverage. I don't think this is quite as matte as the Hourglass, but I'll have to try them side by side to really see. But this is in that same category. Whereas there's nothing that I currently own that I would really compare with the Luminous Silk, simply because it is so light, and I don't own a lot of concealers. I don't think there are a lot of concealers that are so light. Maybe the Clé de Peau. Actually, that would be the best comparison. The Clé de Peau concealing pen, not the little stick. Also the Chantecaille. Since I swatched both Armani's, let's go ahead and swatch both of these and just see what they look like. So first I'm going in with Luminous Silk. And then here is the McGrath. Oof. So I haven't touched either of these. I simply did a couple strokes on my hand like you saw, and this is what they look like. My final thoughts overall, I really love both of these concealers. I highly recommend both of these concealers. Of course, you do not need both of these concealers, so there are a couple distinguishing factors that I think will help you choose which one, if either are right for you, and you'll have to pardon me, I'm going to peer down at my notes. For one thing, the coverage. The McGrath Labs has more coverage. The Armani can be built up, but I still don't think you're going to achieve as much coverage as you get with the McGrath Labs. So if that's something that is really important to you in a concealer, that's the one you should go with. Another factor would be price or overall value. So the McGrath Labs retails for $32. It's less expensive, but it only has 5 milliliters of product. Whereas the Armani is $38, $6 more, but you get more than double. This has 12 milliliters of product. It's hard to believe looking at them, but sure enough, it says at the bottom, 5 milliliters, 12 milliliters, 38 versus 32. So if you're looking for something that's a much better value, the Armani is the way to go. Both of them have skincare, so I know that's going to be a very popular question, is which is best for mature skin. I think the finish is pretty comparable. I know I said I thought that the Luminous Silk was maybe a slightly more radiant. I don't think there's that much of a difference. This has some sort of complex hyaluronic acid, blah, blah, blah. So does the Armani. So both of them have something in there, but you're really going to have to prep the skin properly. If you have more mature skin, you have really dry under eyes, you just want to make sure that you hydrate, eye cream, perhaps the Sisley Eye Contour Mask that I always recommend, something that's going to lock down that moisture. And then when you go on top with either of these concealers, I don't think they're necessarily going to dry you out. They're not drying. They just have more of a natural finish, which can be a good thing because then you don't necessarily have to set them with powder. I wrote down on my notes that neither of them have an issue creasing. That is huge. To me, that is the #1 factor when I'm looking for a great concealer. It can't crease. I don't really mind the price, the ingredients, even the coverage sometimes if it's a concealer that doesn't crease, because that way you can talk, you can eat, you can move your face, and you don't have to worry in the back of your mind, oh, is my concealer looking crazy? We've all been in those situations when we've gone out the door and we look in the mirror a few hours later and we think, what has been happening? Why didn't anybody tell me? I know I certainly have been there, and I was so overly impressed with how neither of these seem to have issues creasing. So if that's your major concern, I think you'll be happy with both. And then the next thing is availability. I'm sure at some point soon this Armani Luminous silk will make its way out to department stores and Armani counters. Right now I can only find this directly on the Armani website. I hate ordering blind online, especially with something like this. So guessing the right shade and not really having an easy place to return or swatch on your hand, you might want to hold off on this, seriously, until you can see it in person, and then you'll know, or at least have some sort of idea of whether or not it truly is right for you. Whereas the Pat McGrath Labs, I did order this directly from Pat McGrath, but I believe it's available at Sephora. I'm not 100% sure if it's out in stores yet. I know it will be at some point, but even ordering online from Sephora, it's a lot easier, and you know you have a storefront where you can return it, exchange it, etc. if necessary. So that may be a convenience factor. I know I ran into that with the Dior concealer, ordering directly from the Dior website. And now I'm kind of stuck with it, and it wasn't one that I was very happy with because as much as it was a great value, it creased like crazy on me. So I am so happy that a concealer that actually is worth the money and a great value works so well. It certainly feels like this has been the year of concealers, and I am not upset about it. I love trying new concealers, and I'm so happy that this round went so well for me. There are a couple other new ones. There's a Kosas concealer. I saw Mandy Davis talk about it. It's one of the Clean at Sephora concealers. It's supposed to be really radiant. So that's one that I might try. Also, there's a new Beauty Blender concealer. I'm sort of interested just in case it's something really amazing. So I may end up picking up those. Let me know down below in the comment section if that would be something that would interest you. But now that I have these two, I'm going to continue to play around with them and wear them, compare them with my other top concealers. And that concealer roundup video is going to be in the works sometime very soon. But I'm glad that I held out. I waited a little bit longer. That way I could include these in the mix because they are certainly giving my favorite concealers a run for the money. And that completes today's review. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and you found this information helpful. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Leave me your comments, your questions down below. I love hearing from you guys. Let me know if you've tried any of these concealers, if there's any others that you have your eye on. Drop me a comment. We'll keep the conversation going there. As always, I will be linking everything mentioned, everything that I have today on my face, down below in the description box for your convenience. And for more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.